Here we have a picture of Malala, and one of the most famous quotes that came from such an inspiring person, somebody who's been such through such tragedy in her life. She once said, "Education is the power terrorists fear most." Now, I just want that to settle in a little bit. I want you to think about that for a little bit. I want you to think about your personal education, where you came from, the high schools that you were in, the experiences that you've had with teachers, why you continued with your education through college, maybe getting a PhD or a doctorate, and how education has personally affected you in your life and your family. Now, for Malala, she had this huge tragedy, and she comes to America and she inspires people to be better. And one of the greatest things that she inspires people is having an education. And with this quote, I want to repeat it so that it can settle in your minds for just a second. She says, "Education is the power terrorists fear most." Now, I personally have only graduated from high school. I'm currently in college. But that doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to education, because I grew up in a standardized world where we learned to focus on how to pass a test rather than what we were actually supposed to learn and how we can grow. When I was in college, there were many times where the teachers would teach us how to eliminate questions, how to eliminate answers so that we can pick the best question, so that we can pick the best answer. And I often thought, wow, that's interesting. So really, in the end of the day, they want us to guess if we don't know, or they want us to pick the best of the right answer. Maybe there's two, maybe there's just one, but pick the best if you can. And I remember learning in high school how to take a test rather than learning what the test was about. Now, I was focused in AP psychology, I was focused in AP biology, I was focused in AP US history. I was learning these fundamental things in high school, college level courses, and my teachers were teaching me how to take a test rather than using that valuable time to teach me what I needed to know. America, as we know, is falling behind in education. And let me show you these stats right here. America is 17th right now. And the first one we know is to be Finland. Finland is at the top of the charts in education. So let's go back in time a little bit. Let's think about this a little bit deeper. Let's think about where we were as a country, as a nation 50 years ago. Now, if you've ever talked to your parents or your grandparents, what was school like for you? And they might say, "Oh, I walked 35 miles to get to school," and something like this. But really, have you ever talked with your parents or with your grandparents about what their education was like, how their classrooms were set up, what kind of tests they were taking? Now, if you take a poll, which we see here, tests and homework and time that takes students, parents, to complete homework has increased tremendously than 50 years ago. Think about this for a second. Classrooms were set up in rows, 5, 5, 5, 5. They were set up in rows because they were taught and they were educated on how they could work in coal mines, how they could work in industries where labor was tough. These classrooms were set up on instruction given to them for laborers in the work industry. They weren't set up for education on learning from each other, learning as groups, learning from history, learning what might happen in the future, learning what's been scientifically proven. These classrooms were set up for a different set of people at a different set of time. Now, we've kept this tradition because America is so happy and so satisfied with what we have that we have not continually moving onto what is best for us and our kids and how we learn in the classroom. Think about 50 years ago. Think about what I just said. Now think about you and your children and what they're experiencing now. Standardized testing is a huge problem. And let me tell you why. Tests are proven on what we have learned, not what we know. And I will explain that later in my body. Okay, now step 3 in my body. How can we improve as America, as the United States of America? This is a beautiful nation. Our founding fathers found this amazing nation. If we focus and if we learn from other nations what they are doing to improve, how they are becoming more intelligent, and we take that and apply it into our children's classrooms, we will see an infinite change in our nation. An infinite change, not in standardized testing, not if you got a 30 on the ACT, not if you got a 29 on the ACT, but the intelligence of a being and the intelligence of a child. What he has learned and what he knows, not what he learned to take a test, but what he knows as a human. There are many people in the world, not only Malala, who have been affected by education. As a nation, we have been born to be free and live freely. If our children and our children's posterity do not know the history of our country, how we got here, where we have come from, and how hard it was to get where we are, then our nation will fall. They need this knowledge, and they need it to be taught to them better, not standardized, but how Finland is doing it, how Germany is doing it, how these other countries are doing it. We will face failure and not know how to overcome it. We will see opportunities and not take them, only because we and our children were not educated enough on matters that mean the most. Wickedness is prevailing throughout the world, and if our children and if we are not intelligent or knowledgeable enough, then our country will fall.